If regret had a sound, it would be silence. Thick, breathless, crushing. That's all I heard when I stumbled into our kitchen. No soft greetings, no worried questions. Just Luke, sitting at the table, arms folded so tightly it looked painful. His eyes were fixed somewhere beyond the wood grain, as if staring hard enough might make him disappear. I should have known something had snapped, but I was too far gone. "You stayed up for me," I slurred, leaning against the doorframe. "That's sweet, but unnecessary, you know." His fingers twitched, but he said nothing. The words slipped out like spilled liquor, bitter and burning. "I'm not even attracted to you anymore." The silence cracked, but he didn't. No flinch, no shout, just the slow grind of his jaw tightening until it looked like it might shatter. I blinked at him, confused by his stillness. "Come on," I muttered, waving a hand. "It's just the truth, right?" Still nothing. Only the distant hum of the fridge filling the void between us. Maybe I'd said worse before. Maybe this was just the first time he believed me. It's easy to think disasters happen all at once. Some giant explosion, a screaming match, a door slamming so hard it rattles the windows. But the truth? It's quieter, smaller, like hairline fractures spreading across a windshield. Invisible at first, until it all caves in under the weight. I don't even know when the first crack appeared. Maybe it was that Sunday afternoon when we were getting ready for brunch with my friends. Luke stood in front of the mirror, fumbling with a button on his shirt that pulled too tight across his stomach. "You sure you want to wear that one?" I said, forcing a chuckle. "Looks like it's fighting for its life." He laughed too, a soft, breathy sound. "I guess I've been hitting the leftovers a little too hard," he said, smoothing the fabric over his belly. I shrugged, tossing a glance at my reflection instead. Happens to the best of us. But the way he folded the shirt and reached for another, slower, quieter, lodged somewhere deep in my gut. I ignored it. Another time, a few months later, we were out with friends. The conversation turned to gym memberships, weekend hikes, fitness trackers. Everyone was flexing, laughing about personal bests. Someone nudged Luke. "You still running those 5-minute miles, man?" Luke smiled, shaking his head. "Retired from all that. Now I'm more into 5-minute naps." Laughter broke out around the table, good-natured, teasing. I laughed too loud. And in the middle of it, I caught the flicker of something in Luke's eyes, a brief dimming, like a flame snapping in a gust of wind. Gone before anyone else noticed. But I did. And still, I said nothing. It got easier after that. Easier to pick at him in small ways. Easier to let the comparisons creep in. The way my friends' husbands seemed leaner, flashier, more effortless. One night, after too many glasses of wine at Jenna's house, I slumped onto her couch and muttered, "He's sweet. But honestly, sometimes he just feels boring." Jenna raised an eyebrow. "Boring? Emily, he adores you." I know, I said quickly, waving it off. "It's just, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm dragging him through life." Jenna didn't press, but the silence that followed said enough. Somewhere deep down, I knew I wasn't being fair. But I kept going anyway. Luke never fought back. Not once. No raised voices, no slammed doors. He just smiled that tired smile of his. The one that didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. "Long day?" I'd ask, seeing him slouch through the door. "Same as always," he'd reply, dropping his keys in the bowl by the entryway. I convinced myself his quiet meant he didn't care. That if he cared, he'd argue, he'd fight, he'd call me out. Instead, he just folded himself smaller and smaller until he barely took up space at all. Maybe if he had slammed a door or raised his voice or thrown my own cruelty back at me, it would have jolted me awake. Maybe if he'd looked me in the eye and said, "Stop hurting me," instead of smiling through it, I would have realized how close we were to falling apart. But he didn't. And I didn't. Instead, we let the silence thicken between us like fog until we couldn't see each other anymore. Until all I could feel was the growing sense that something was missing, never realizing it was me, chipping away at him, piece by piece. The bar pulsed with sound, music too loud, laughter too sharp, glasses clinking like distant alarms. I tipped my glass back, ignoring the bitter sting of cheap whiskey. For the first time in months, the tightness in my chest loosened a little. Not happiness, just less heaviness. As if I could float for a few hours before reality pulled me back under. I didn't notice him right away. He slid onto the stool next to mine like he belonged there, confident without trying, his body language easy, almost lazy. "Rough night?" he asked, nodding toward my half-empty glass. I laughed, a hollow sound even to my own ears. "You could say that." He grinned. "Well, you're officially the prettiest sad person in this place." I should have rolled my eyes. I should have turned away. Instead, I smiled. Small, automatic. The kind of smile you give when you don't have the strength to do anything else. We talked. Surface-level stuff at first. His job, my job, favorite drinks, worst bosses. Easy laughter bubbling up between us, too easy. The words blurred with the alcohol. The compliments landed softer than they should have. And when he leaned in, voice low against the pounding bass, and said, "Want to step outside? It's getting way too loud in here." I nodded without thinking. The night air was sharp, cool against my overheated skin. We stood awkwardly beside his car, under a flickering streetlight. "Better out here," he said, hands tucked in his pockets. "You seemed like you needed some breathing room." I gave a short, dry laugh. "Yeah, breathing room. Probably a whole new life, too." He smiled again, slower this time. "Could always start tonight." Maybe it was the drinks. Maybe it was the aching emptiness I'd been carrying for months. Maybe it was just the way he looked at me, like I was still someone worth wanting. I didn't think. I leaned in. Or maybe he did. Maybe we both did. The kiss wasn't cinematic. It was clumsy, rushed, heavy with desperation more than desire. I tasted regret the second our lips touched. But I didn't pull away. Not immediately. Not until the headlights hit us like a slap. I turned my head, instinctively squinting into the glare. A car sat there, engine humming low. The driver's face shadowed but unmistakable. Luke. My stomach twisted so violently I almost stumbled backward. The man beside me caught my arm to steady me. "Hey, you okay?" I barely heard him. Luke didn't move, didn't yell, didn't even honk. He just stared, long enough for the shame to sink into my skin, thick and searing. And then he shifted into gear, turned the wheel, and drove away. No acceleration, no screeching tires, just a smooth, measured exit. As if he couldn't even muster anger. As if I wasn't worth it. The guy next to me followed my gaze. "You know him?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry and burning. "That's my husband." He took a step back instantly, hands raised. "I didn't know. I swear, if I had—" I barely heard the rest. It didn't matter. Nothing he said could unmake what had just happened. "Just go," I managed, my voice cracking under the weight of humiliation. He didn't argue, didn't linger. He slipped back into the bar, the door swinging shut behind him like a gavel. I stood alone in the parking lot, the cold sinking through my jacket, nausea curling tight in my stomach. What had I done? What kind of person did that? Not even out of love, not out of passion, out of loneliness, out of cowardice. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, and called Luke. Straight to voicemail. I called again. And again. "Please pick up," I whispered into the dark. Nothing. When I finally pulled into our driveway, His driveway. His car wasn't there. The porch light was off. The house looked abandoned. I stepped inside, half expecting him to be sitting at the kitchen table again, arms crossed, waiting for another blow. But the house was silent. No light switches flipped on, no coffee brewing, no presents. Just a hollow echo of what used to be a home. I sat down on the floor, back against the door, knees pulled to my chest. And for the first time in a very long time, I let myself cry without holding anything back. Not because I lost him, but because somewhere, deep down, I knew I had been losing him for a long time, and I'd done nothing to stop it. I opened the voicemail app, thumb hovering over his number. No new messages, just the last one he ever left for me. Weeks ago, when he said he was picking up dinner on the way home. Be there soon. Love you. I listened to it twice before deleting it, because somehow even hearing those words now felt like stealing from someone I no longer deserved. When I pushed open the front door, the house felt wrong. Not empty, gutted. The air inside was still, thick, almost stale, like no one had lived here for days. I nudged the door shut behind me with my heel, the faint click echoing too loudly in the silence. Kicking off my shoes out of habit, my toes brushed the cold wood floor. I waited, without thinking, for the familiar clink of keys in the ceramic bowl by the entryway. Nothing. The living room stood untouched, but off. The cushions sagged unevenly, like someone had sat there too long, then never returned to fix them. There was a hollow spot by the doorway where his hiking boots usually waited, half-laced, ready for weekend trails he'd try to drag me to. It wasn't obvious. It was in the details. The ones your heart notices before your brain can catch up. I set my bag down quietly, as if noise might make everything worse. "Luke?" I called out, voice small, almost afraid to disturb whatever had settled here. No answer. Just the hum of the fridge, a low mechanical whisper filling the silence. Panic simmered under my skin as I moved toward the bedroom, each step heavier than the last. The closet door was ajar, swinging slightly with the draft. I hesitated, hand hovering near the frame. Part of me already knew, part of me still hoped. I pushed the door open. His side, the right, was stripped bare. The hangers swung lightly, empty and accusing. A faint, dusty outline on the shelf showed where his duffel bag had rested, untouched for years. I stood frozen, blinking hard. Blinking didn't fix it. It stayed hollow, stayed real. The phone trembled in my hand as I fumbled to unlock it. I hit his name before I could think. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Again. Nothing. "Please, can we talk? I'm sorry. Come home." No read receipt, no little gray delivered bubble, just emptiness. I curled up on the couch that night, phone clutched against my chest like a lifeline, the darkness pressing down on me from every side. Every creak of the house made me lift my head, heart hammering, hoping for footsteps. A key turning in the lock. A quiet, "I'm here." But it never came. When the first weak light of morning seeped through the blinds, it brought no comfort. Only the brittle exhaustion of someone who had hoped too hard for too long. I dragged myself to the kitchen, needing the ritual of coffee, something, anything, to anchor me. That's when I saw it. A plain brown box sitting neatly on the counter. I stared at it, heart stumbling. Maybe he left something. A note, a set of keys, something fixable. I approached it like it might bite. Lifting the lid, the smell of cardboard and memory hit me at once. Inside were relics of a life I barely recognized now. A movie ticket stub from our first date, edges soft from being thumbed through too many times. The tarnished keychain from that disaster of a road trip. The one where we ended up stranded in the middle of nowhere and laughing until our sides hurt. The crumpled, hand-drawn map I'd given him when we went camping. A childish scrawl with a lopsided tree and a stick figure labeled Luke, the Lost Explorer. He had kept it all, even the things I had forgotten, Each piece I pulled out was heavier than the last, weighted with guilt and things left unsaid. At the very top, a folded sheet of paper. My hands shook as I opened it. 2 lines. Neat, careful handwriting. I loved you even when it hurt. Now I'm choosing myself. For a long time, I just stood there, staring at the words, as if staring hard enough could erase them, as if maybe they were written in pencil, and if I wished hard enough, I could rub them away. But they stayed. I slid down onto the kitchen floor, the box tilting beside me, spilling pieces of our life onto the cold tiles. I clutched the letter against my chest, the words searing themselves into my skin. "I'm sorry," I whispered into the empty room. "I'm so sorry." But the house, like Luke, stayed silent. Apologies meant nothing here. They were like offering an umbrella to someone already drowning. I thought leaving would look different, that it would be loud, messy, screaming, slammed doors. At least then there would be wreckage. Something to fight over, something to fix. But Luke didn't leave me with anger. He left me with absence. With space so wide and clean it left no footholds for regret to climb. He left in a way that told me, more than words ever could, that he wasn't coming back. And somehow that final mercy, that refusal to hate me, hurt more than hatred ever could, because he had loved me, even when it hurt, even when I made it harder than it should have been, even when I didn't deserve it. And now, finally, he was loving himself more, and I was left alone, to finally understand the difference. The worst part wasn't the loneliness. I thought it would be. I thought the empty apartment, the silent mornings, the way the bed stayed perfectly made on his side, I thought that would be the hardest. But it wasn't. It was the way people started disappearing too. No dramatic speeches, no accusations hurled across text messages, no sobbing phone calls at midnight asking, "How could you?" Just absence. Slow, creeping, suffocating absence. At first, it was subtle. Messages I sent to the group chat would get polite, delayed replies. Short ones. Emoji reactions instead of conversations. Then, fewer invitations. A canceled brunch. An excuse about being so busy these days. And after that, nothing at all. I saw it unfold in real time. Scrolling through my feed, finding photos of familiar faces clinking glasses, laughing under string lights, events I never even heard about. Every like, every smiling caption felt like a little knife twist. They weren't being cruel. They were moving on, and I wasn't invited. One afternoon, after 3 days without a single notification lighting up my phone, I cracked. I texted Jenna. "Coffee, please?" She replied 2 hours later. "Maybe, briefly. I'm at the corner cafe until 4. No warmth, no heart emojis. Just a window. I got there in 10 minutes, heart pounding like I was about to step into a courtroom instead of a coffee shop. She was already there, tucked into a corner booth, stirring her drink absently. When she saw me, she didn't smile. Didn't wave. Just looked up, blinked once, and went back to stirring. I slid into the seat across from her, my hands twisting in my lap. "Hey," I said, voice too soft, too unsure. "Hey," she replied, voice flat. An awkward pause thickened between us. I guess you heard," I tried. She didn't look up. "People talk." Another pause. "I messed up," I said, swallowing against the lump in my throat. "I know I did." She finally set her spoon down, fixing me with a look I couldn't quite read. Pity? Disappointment? A little bit of both? "You're not a bad person, Em," she said carefully. "But you make everything about you." I blinked. The words landed harder than I expected. "You know," she continued, her voice tightening, "for years we all watched you chip away at Luke. Little things. Sarcastic jokes. Eye rolls. Acting like you were settling for him when he was the one holding everything together." My mouth opened, then closed. Every time someone said something, we made excuses for you, she said. She's just stressed. She doesn't mean it. She's trying to figure herself out. She shook her head slowly. But watching what happened, watching you tear down someone who actually loved you, her hands folded in front of her, it made a lot of us realize maybe you don't know how to love back. I wanted to argue, wanted to say she didn't understand, that it wasn't that simple. But the words dried up before they reached my mouth. Because deep down, I knew she was right. Luke deserved better, she said, her voice barely more than a whisper now. And honestly, so do you. You just don't know it yet. The barista called out an order. Plates clinked. Normal sounds, in a world where everything had quietly shifted while I wasn't looking. I'm sorry, I said, my voice cracking. I know you are, Jenna said, finally standing up, grabbing her purse. But sometimes sorry doesn't fix it. She paused, looking at me one last time. I hope you figure it out, Em. I really do. And then she walked away. No hug, no promise to text later, just silence. I sat there long after she left, watching the foam in my coffee collapse into a thin, sad ring. Around me, life continued. Chatter, laughter, phones buzzing, like the world had simply moved on. And me? I was still stuck, still replaying every scene, every choice, every cruel joke dressed up as affection. I thought about the night I kissed a stranger, about the look on Luke's face before he drove away, about the box he left on the counter, about the 2 lines that broke me more than any screaming match ever could. I loved you even when it hurt. Now I'm choosing myself. At the time, I thought I could somehow fix it, that if I tried hard enough, apologized sincerely enough, people would forgive me, that Luke would come back, that friends would rally around. But sometimes the damage you cause isn't a cut you can bandage. Sometimes it's a crack in the foundation that makes the whole house crumble. And when it does, when the dust finally settles, you don't get to rebuild where you destroyed. You start somewhere else. Alone. I pulled out my phone and opened the old group chat, thumb hovering over the message box, wanting so badly to say something, anything, to pull it all back together. But what could I possibly say? Hey, sorry for being selfish and wrecking everything. Hey, sorry you had to see me for who I really was. No words would be enough. Not anymore. I locked the screen without typing a thing and slipped the phone back into my bag. The truth was sharp and simple. No one was coming to save me from this. No apology could rewind time. No confession could undo what I'd made of my life. And maybe that was the justice of it all. Not punishment, not public humiliation, just being left behind. Just the slow, silent realization that I'd spent so long looking for better. I never saw that I had already been loved better than I deserved. It happened on a Tuesday. A day like any other, gray, heavy, the kind of day where time feels slower. I was folding laundry, pretending like routine could stitch my life back together, when my phone buzzed across the counter. A number I didn't recognize, no contact photo, no name. For a second, a stupid, desperate hope lit up inside me. Maybe it was Luke. Maybe he finally wanted to talk. I swiped the notification open with trembling fingers. We don't hate you. I reread the words 3 times, my heart stuttering in my chest. It wasn't Luke. But please don't come near him again. You didn't just break his heart. You broke our faith in people. Beneath it, 2 words that felt heavier than paragraphs of accusations. Luke's mom. I stood there, blinking at the screen, the air feeling suddenly thinner. No anger, no screaming, no pleas for explanations, just quiet, dignified distance. Just the final door closing, not with a slam, but with a soft click that left no chance of reopening. I sank into the kitchen chair, phone still clutched in my hand, the message burning itself into my mind. No hate, just disbelief. disappointment so deep it didn't even have to shout. I tried to imagine her writing it, maybe sitting at her kitchen table, the same one where I used to laugh with her over coffee, where she used to tease Luke about forgetting anniversaries but always loving me so much. Did she hesitate before hitting send? Did she sit there thinking maybe there was a shred of the girl she'd once welcomed into her family still left? Or had she known all along it was over? I wanted to respond. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry, I miss you all. I never meant to hurt anyone." But I didn't. Because sometimes silence isn't cruelty. It's mercy. It's giving someone the dignity to walk away without forcing them to relive the betrayal. So I placed my phone face down on the table, and I let the silence stretch between us. Final. Absolute. Because maybe that was the real consequence, not the loneliness, not the guilt gnawing through sleepless nights, but the knowledge that when you burn bridges, sometimes, even if you build 1,000 apologies, the other side chooses not to look back. I wasn't trying to find him, I swear. But fate doesn't ask permission. It just sets the stage and shoves you into it. The grocery store was nearly empty, muted music overhead, the faint whir of refrigerators humming down the aisle. I turned the corner, barely glancing up, and there he was. Luke. Laughing. His hand brushed against a woman's, their fingers naturally weaving together as they walked past the produce. She was radiant, her laughter effortless, the kind that made people turn their heads without even realizing. And Luke. He looked lighter, like someone who had finally set down a weight they carried for too long. I froze, my hands tightening around the cart handle. She nudged him gently. "You're impossible," she teased, bumping his hip with hers. He laughed again, deeper this time, the kind of sound I hadn't heard in years. No tightness around his eyes, no invisible wall around his body. He caught my stare for a brief, brutal second. His eyes flicked past me. No recognition, no hesitation. Just indifference. Or maybe he saw everything, and simply chose not to care. There's no dramatic comeback here. No teary doorstep reunions. No grand apologies that stitch the wounds shut. Luke didn't call, didn't write, didn't unblock me. He moved forward. I stayed behind. The apartment I rent now hums with strangers' arguments through thin walls. The blinds rattle when the wind shifts. Sometimes I catch myself whispering into the empty kitchen. "I'm sorry." No one answers. One night, Jenna texted. Just 2 words. "How are you?" I stared at it, fingers hovering. "Still losing," I almost typed. Instead, I wrote, "I'm fine." Because who wants to hear the truth when it's this ugly? Most nights, I sit by the cracked window, replaying it all. It wasn't the kiss. Wasn't the drunken words. It was every time I chose pride when I should have chosen love. And by the time I saw it, really saw it, he was already gone. If you're still reading, take this from me. Don't wait for the silence, I whisper sometimes into the dark, as if anyone's listening. Don't wait for the door to close before you realize you were the one standing nearest to it. If someone loves you, truly, don't measure them against fantasies. Don't make them beg to be seen. Because sometimes, the last thing you say, even in a whisper, even without meaning it, becomes the thing they remember most, and you don't get to take it back.